Hey Raf, I'm excited to present this material to our brand friends, and there's quite a bit to cover. So I thought maybe the best way for us to do this would to just kick it off generally by just asking, what is a print quality program? What is PQP, and why do brands want to implement this?
Hey, Christine, thanks for that. It's a very interesting question, and there's not just one simple, straightforward answer. A PQP is a program to control, to make visible, and assess the quality of product, of packaging that a brand receives. Brands around the world are displayed through their packaging, whether people are buying online, they still receive packaging, whether people are walking into stores and shops, they still receive packaging. Their first input is the packaging associated with that brand, and it's assumed uh, really quite a significant role in the life, the presentation, and the way that a brand is understood and interpreted. Why would a brand want to implement control around this is probably really a very interesting question with a lot of different answers. There are the obvious answers. There are things like taking control over that presentation, taking control over that presentation itself in particular. And we've seen a lot of studies and a lot of work that focus on how poor presentation and poor color control, and in particular mismatching colors, impact both a brand's sales and a brand's what people feel about a brand. It damages the perception of quality. People think, well, if they can't even manage to keep the color of the packaging consistent, what on earth are the inside contents like?
So I
So
think it's probably fair then, sorry Raf, to say, it's the difference between sold out and on sale, right?
very often, and we do have some stories and some experience of that. In particular, in some of the sectors, particular sectors where there is limited shelf life, if people are looking at the packaging and the packaging doesn't look right, they will select another packet, they will select another option. And the more people select another option, the more that piece of product sits on the shelf, and actually it becomes self-fulfilling because people move away from the product, they leave the product there, it actually gets older, and eventually it does go out of date. We do have instances of that happening over the years based purely on the packaging presentation. So absolutely, people need to make sure, brands need to make sure that the packaging is consistent, it's correct, and it's what they want. But there are other reasons for implementing a PQP as well as that. So control over the color, control over the perception of the product quality is one key element, but we've also seen increasingly people using PQP programs and the associated work around them, the associated work around standards, to reduce things like time to market. So the more controlled you are, the more disciplined and better structure you have around your color choices, the faster you can get to market, the less time you spend trying to decide what might work and what might not work on different substrates. If that's all laid out for you, your time to market is reduced. Particularly in current times, people like a PQP program because, of course, they can no longer visit the printers as easily. And we've seen quite a number of our customers working with these solutions as a way of getting past limitations of not being able to visit specific printers for production runs, or even people using the data and the metrics associated with the PQP program to alleviate the fact that all of the first production run samples have been sent to the office and people can't get into the office. There really are a lot of benefits from a PQP program. Our friends in, sorry, go on.
So if I were to kind of wrap up that scenario there, it's really about brand equity, kind of speed to market, the ability to control costs, and ultimately you're able to do that because you're communicating something very succinct. So when we look at PQP and the next logical step is, God, how do I even go about doing that? Like, where does a brand start? So can you share with us in the experience you've had where the best place is for a brand to kind of jump off?
Yeah, the most common starting point for a successful jump off point and to make a program work well is really to look at the standards and to make sure that the digital color standards are both the correct ones, the approved ones, they are the colors that you want to represent the brand, and that they are also achievable, attainable targets. So by using digital data, of course, we immediately remove many of the communication barriers. We don't have to rely on physical samples staying in date, physical samples not fading, physical samples all being the same. So we always recommend that a brand will work with digital color standards, but that moving to those digital color standards then gives you something else, because it gives you much faster communication. It gives you a consistent point to work to, and it also, if the digital standards are set correctly, it also gives you achievable colors. In turn, that helps your print supply base because now they have achievable colors. Achievable colors means that they can get to them on press without spending 2, 3, 4 hours trying to bend the ink up or down or move the press around. So that is really the first place to start. Once we have those achievable color standards digitized, then the next place is really to ensure that we have a common way of measuring those standards. And the common way of measuring those standards, that really means using an appropriate spectrophotometer, the right geometry, okay, the right kind, the right calibration, the correct white point for the spectrophotometer, so that you can rely on the data. There are also tools out there that we strongly recommend for any program, tools like Net Profiler, that ensure that the instruments read consistently across the globe. And this has been key to the success of the programs that are out there, because that means that both the brands and the printers can rely on the data that they're getting from the spectrophotometers. That really is a great help, and it removes the questions and any doubts about my spectro's right, your spectro's right, why are they not reading the same. Using the right tools like Net Profiler removes that as a doubt and greatly enhances the security of a brand program. Once we have the right measurement equipment, of course, the next step is to capture that data, because just having it correctly labeled or correctly on the spectro doesn't help close the communication gap. So there are two parts to this. One, we need the right quality control software, and two, we need that quality control software to be able to send the data up to what's called a scorecard. The scorecard is simply a cloud-based location where all of the color quality data from print supply chain sits. The quality control software, of course, is important and has benefits both to the brand, because everybody can use the same consistent quality control software that allows rapid mobilization, easy rollout, consistent documentation, consistent standard operating procedures, and of course it brings benefits to the printers. In particular, if you look at a software like ColorCert, it has some great tools in there that help the printers to get on shade quicker, that help the printers and the print suppliers with their efficiencies using tools like Best Match. So the quality control software is a key part too. And then, of course, that quality control software reports up to the scorecard. The scorecard is a place where the brand can see those results, and that's critical, because once the supply chain understands that all of the results are visible, not just the first production runs, not just the runs where they send samples in, but all of the data from all of the production runs is visible, then the quality tends to jump up. It's also essential because where it can be seen the printers are struggling to match the quality, to meet the quality expectations, then we can have positive interventions with the printers and discuss why they may be struggling. Maybe it's their profile, maybe it's their particular substrate or their particular ink set, but either way, we can then have positive intervention to help improve the quality and get that packaging consistent and right as efficiently as possible.
That's great, Raf. And so if I kind of recap what you've said there, the start is creating those standards, and then you need a mechanism to measure and then capture that data, and obviously then the QC part. So when you talk about the standards and creating digital color standards, what does that really mean, and how do brands communicate? I know that helps them communicate, but can you explain to us briefly what that really means for the brand and communicating globally?
Yeah, the way that it works and the way that digitization helps brands is by firstly speeding up the process. Once a digital library is created, and creating a digital library or using an existing digital library that's up there, there are digital libraries published for over 41 substrates now in the Pantone Live system. So using an existing set of digital libraries or creating a digital library really helps the brands at the design process, because now you have a fixed, usable, visible set of targets for design and brand managers to work with. People don't need to reinvent the same color time after time after time. People don't have to guess what the actual definition of this color is. If people are asked, okay, so what is your brand equity color? It's there, it's digitized, it can be reproduced in multiple ways. It can be reproduced, of course, physically, but of course it can be reproduced and repurposed numerically for use in web, or use in repro, or use on pack. So there really is a lot of benefit to moving to that digital workflow. It is something that we have spent a lot of time over the last few years working with customers to do and build successful and useful libraries. Of course, that then allows people to deduplicate, so you don't have overlapping colors, simplifies the process, simplification, again, faster to market. Less colors to get confused, less colors to curate. It really makes for a much more efficient process all the way to the top of the chain. That then
So if we
feeds
think
down.
about that, sorry, Raf, didn't mean to interrupt you, but if we think about that, so it could actually help as well when they have product that they're matching color to on packaging, correct? In being able to digitize that data to say I'm using a specific color to for my actual product, but I want that color to match on my packaging.
Absolutely, and we've seen quite a lot of people doing this recently. So once those colors, the traditional way of working is that somebody will send a sample out of either product to the packaging team, or even packaging to the product team. Somebody will send out a sample. The packaging or product team then spends weeks trying to match this physical sample with greater or lesser success. samples, go backwards and forwards. Is this good enough? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. What we have seen is if we digitize those colors, if we use the right digital references, that process becomes so much quicker. Okay? Certainly, it's often validated by a final physical step, but we've seen reductions in the cycle times from, in one case, we went from 14-week cycle time down to 2-week cycle time. And that's 12 weeks by my maths. That's 12 weeks of project time that the brand got back simply by switching to correctly defined digital references.
That's
The
amazing.
benefits are huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that, from there, so you have that project time, but I would assume that that also then helps with supply chain, right? So now design has decided on a color. They've been able to communicate that across product and packaging and different substrates. So they can then communicate that the same way to their converters and manufacturers, correct?
Exactly, exactly that. And we've seen over the years people try all different kinds of ways of communicating efficiently with their supply chain. Digital, it's there, it's in the cloud, supply chain can access it at the press of a download button directly into their QC software. It makes things so much faster, so much more efficient. And of course, that 12 weeks that you've just got back gives more time to work with your supply chain to ensure that they're set up, that everybody is then able to deliver the correct product. No more last minute scrambles, no more, we know this isn't the right color, but we're shipping it to you anyway because we know we've got a deadline to meet. It really does
So,
help the process.
so now the brand has created that global color. They've communicated it. Everybody's in a really good spot, and you've put all that work in on the front end. So what kind of tools do they put forward to their supply chain, and what helps supply chain then make sure that what they're going to get back, all that hard work that we put in, is then consistent on the end, that what arrives on the docks or what's put up on shelf in the store is exactly what the expectation is supposed to be?
Excellent question. And we have seen over the years some programs do the first half and not the second half. And you tend to see that over a short period of time, the quality gains that you anticipated soon disappear. So to help both the brand and the supply chain meet those digital targets, again, we recommend this is where the quality control software comes in, along with the measurement instrumentation and the use of the scorecard to monitor and validate that the measurements are good. So the QC software is pivotal here because that QC software is telling the supplier at the point of production whether or not they are in or out of specification. And that's really a different way of working to the old-fashioned way where a print supplier would print something, they would ship it to you and say, was this okay? Well, by that time, the product's already on shelf. It's gone. It's in the store. So you're taking retrospective steps to look at what damage has been done. By using our quality control software and scorecard, what you're seeing is you're seeing the quality controlled before it leaves the production site, before it leaves the factory, which is, of course, where you want to control it. From the printer's perspective, this is even better because now when they ship something out, they can ensure that it's within specification before it arrives 2 weeks after shipping to find out it gets rejected or they get hit with a claim. They can monitor and correct at the point of production.
So it's fair to say as well that this is an ongoing process, right? That you're not just doing first runs, that it's really going through the process. So when you redesign something, you can ensure that every single time you print it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, that that quality is going to be consistent. That's what the tool does.
Absolutely. And what the tool set gives us, what that does is not only ensure that consistency for that particular SKU at that particular printer, it ensures that consistency across multiple production runs of that SKU in multiple factories. And of course, it also then ensures that the common colors that may be used across different SKUs, the brand equity color used multiple SKUs, are all consistent. So what you're building is a whole range of product which looks the same as you intended it. That's what the tool set gives you. That's why the digital targets are pivotal to start off on the right foot, but that's why the QC software and the scorecarding are equally as important in ensuring that what you want to receive is what you are delivered.
That's great, Raf, and thank you so much for that. So if we can kind of recap quickly, it is about maintaining brand equity. It is about gaining speed to market, controlling costs, and really a lot of that happens through using tools to communicate and setting up a process. So setting up those standards, using digital tools, using the right measurement equipment, and then ultimately using the right QC, QA tools to have a scorecard to consistently maintain your brand equity throughout the process, no matter where it's printed or manufactured. So this is really great. Thank you so much for providing that information, and we hope that this was useful.
No problem. Thank you very much, Christine.